Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Indie Choice Picks, and today I am bringing to you the creator of The Scientist. The creator's name is Geoff Weber, and he's been working on this project for quite a while. He's on issue number 3, and so you guys sit back and relax and let me bring this creator to you. You can find this campaign in the link below, so enjoy. Hey Jeff, thank you for coming on to the show. This is my show. It's called Indie Choice Picks, where I pick out indie creators such as yourself, bring them on the show, have them do a little interview to kind of get the audience acquainted with, their project and stuff like that. So, Mike is all yours. Tell a little bit about yourself, your comic book, what you plan on doing, so on and so forth. Unedited, unfiltered. You can say whatever you want.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me to speak with you, Will.
No problem.
My name is Geoff Weber. I am a indie comic creator, and I have a comic called The Scientist that I've been working on for quite a long time. It actually first started back in 2005, and I'm just now finally getting it published through Kickstarter. I've published issues 1 and 2 out of 4, and the third issue is scheduled to launch May 7th.
Okay. You said you started this in 2005?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Well, that was when the script was written.
okay. Now, are you doing all the artwork, all the script writing, and all the plots on your own, or do you have a team you're working with?
I co-wrote the script with a friend of mine who passed away back in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and at the time I had started turning it into a comic book, but then I sort of put it on the shelf and didn't touch it for a long time. And then finally I decided I needed to kind of get back and finish it. I thought it would be like I owed it as like a tribute to my friend to finish what we had started. So that's why I kind of picked it back up again and continued working on it. Along the way, I had like a lot of other stuff that happened with my family. Like I've had since that time, I've had 4 kids. I went to graduate school, earned my master's, so I've been busy in the interim. But I never fully abandoned the itch to create comics. So I always wanted to come back to it, and I'm glad I finally was able to.
Yeah, it's not easy when you have a partner that you're working with and something like that happens. It kind of sits in the back of your mind, especially a project that you two are working on. You kind of ask yourself, like, do I go back and finish working on this, or do I just let it go? Like, what would my friend do? Stuff like that. So I feel for you on that.
Yeah.
How long after 2005 when you shelved it and stuff like that? How long before you got back into the project?
Well, I never fully like stopped. It would always be like I would work on it for a few months and then wouldn't touch it for 9, that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it'd be like it was very much like fits and starts. I think I finally I what I did was I I did the sort of the rough layouts for the entire. It was at the time it was going to be a graphic novel
Okay.
before I serialize it. Um, so I had done the rough layouts of the entire 180 pages, which I finished that back in 2013, I think.
Okay.
And then since then, I started converting it into the final art, and then I sort of reached a point where I felt like I wanted to start getting this out to the public, but I didn't really have much of an audience. So I decided to go the route of serializing it, so that way I could um, use Kickstarter and just do a single issue, and it would be not as expensive to produce a single issue, so I wouldn't need quite as many people, as many backers,
Okay.
just I didn't have a huge number of people to be backers at the time. And the idea was that uh, if I split it up and did each issue as a separate Kickstarter, this would also buy me some time to finish up the book, which I still have about 20 pages left to draw before it's fully finished. But
Okay.
it allowed me to sort of start putting it out while I was working on it, and also using these launches to help build up a following.
So you said you had issues 1 and 2 already done, and now you're working on getting 3 out there to the public.
Yeah, well, actually, the art for 3 is fully done too.
Okay.
Um, it's and I'm about halfway through through issue 4, drawing issue 4.
Okay, so did for issues number 1 and number 2, did you do a Kickstarter for that or no?
Yeah, yeah, I kickstarted 1 and 2 as 2 separate kickstarters, and that was success. Those were both successfully funded.
Okay, and then issue number 3 is going to launch on May 7th, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, cool, cool, cool. Well, I'm looking at some of your artwork. I'm gonna share my screen really quick, and I think what I have up here is actually issue number 1
Okay. Yeah.
that you did really well. You got 74 backers and like over almost $2,500 in profits for well not profits or in funding for you guys. So that's a
Yeah.
really good start for issue number 1. That's not bad.
For my very first Kickstarter, and I'm not a established comic creator or anything like that. So
I see a lot of the indie comic creators. It's either I see a lot of them who used to work for the big three. I mean, big two, DC or Marvel, and now they're going off and they're doing their thing with Kickstarter, and they have a platform already, so they can go ahead and
yeah,
just drop a project, and then within an hour or two of them dropping, they're fully funded, and it just goes crazy. But people like you and me who aren't really known, it's kind of like a catch-22. You got to build the audience first before you can go ahead and launch a project that may or may not get funded. And it's kind of like a tug at the heartstrings, because people, if they don't run a Kickstarter properly and they fail, they just kind of give up, and boom, there goes the comic book career. So
yeah, that could be really discouraging to have a Kickstarter fail, but it
yeah.
also shows that you're really determined if you don't let that stop you from doing it again.
Yeah, if you wanted to, I mean, drawing is, everyone has their different styles of art. Like you got people who are into more inking, you got people who are into more colors and stuff like that. To me personally, the thing that kind of gets me going is first, obviously, artwork, but then, of course, if there's a good story to it, like what you have here with the scientist, I think that that's kind of like, if it's a good story, the art could kind of pass or anything like that. But at the end of the day, my passion is like good storytelling. If you can tell a good story, I don't really care about the art. The art could be whatever, but if it's a good story to it, then I'm all in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I kind of took a path early on where I decided I was going to like take. I chose this. I went to art school, and I draw in all kinds of different styles. I've drawn like in very realistic styles, but I made a decision early on that I wanted to kind of take this kind of rough painted cartoon style
Hmm.
and really kind of go with that and to give it kind of like a unique flavor. And I found that by sort of embracing like my own style, I was able to sort of differentiate it from any other comic that's out there.
Hmm.
So it works. It works in 2 ways. I mean, the people that they're like, oh well, it doesn't look like a comic that you would see like on the at the comic store. It doesn't look like a superhero comic or something like that. They're probably not going to be happy either way. They wouldn't be happy with my you know my poor imitation of a Marvel comic. But for the people that are out there and they're like, yeah, I can already get that kind of art, but I want to see something different. Well, then at least I have something different to offer them.
I got you. I got you. So tell us a little bit more about the scientists. I read a little bit about it. They get kidnapped and they're trying to escape. But coming from the creator, I think you could give us a little bit more of an insight on what you're trying to really do with this story and concept.
Sure, it's sort of uh, it was put as a sci-fi Goonies that could turn thriller at any moment.
I can see that. I can see that going with this.
Some people without reading it, just take a glance at it and they mistake it as sort of like, oh, that's a children's story, and while you might be able to have it sort of as okay for mature children, like
Hmm.
the kind that you wouldn't mind showing Jaws to or something like that.
Hmm.
There's quite a few characters die, so it's a pretty intense story.
It's more of like a teen kind of young adult sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
It's sort of in that it it began as a idea where my friend had this concept about characters awakening in a mysterious circumstance and not knowing where they are. They are the greatest scientists in the world, and they've been kidnapped and find themselves wearing spacesuits and just dropped in some sort of like strange industrial looking underground complex.
Okay.
Uh, and I didn't want it to turn into sort of like a James Bond uh, type of action movie. So that's why I suggested that we make, instead of it being the greatest scientists in the world, we make it like these kid scientists, like kids that have uh, been the local heroes at their various science fairs, and that kind of pushed us more into like this sort of Goonies kind of Amblin type direction with the story. And that was something that, since we're both like big fans of like all those kind of 80s adventure movies,
Hmm.
that we both really took to really fast, and we enjoyed writing. Something that we could do like very uh, character focused, with lots of witty dialogue and lots of building on the relationships between the characters, but mixed in with, you know, some good action set pieces, and just a good adventurous story to go along with it.
Okay. Okay. So I kind of missed issues number 1 and 2. Could you, for the people who weren't so lucky to get in on this, the first two Kickstarters, can you give us a little summary of what goes down in issues 1 and 2 and kind of prep us up for issue number 3?
Sure. And each Kickstarter is going to be having catch up for all the previous issues for people that are just jumping on. So every
Okay.
every launch is a jumping on point.
That's good to know. Good to know.
So so it's, the story starts off with so the kids are all champions of their various local science fairs, and they've been invited to this mysterious national science fair, and they're flown out to this pyramid shaped building, and then they go inside, and they're immediately knocked unconscious, and they wake up wearing these hazmat suits inside of this strange facility, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know who's behind it. They're sort of suspicious of each other, if one of them was in on it. They don't know who they can trust, but pretty soon they find out that whatever it is that they've put in, it's a very real threat, as they start encountering these sort of almost like traps, basically, that are very dangerous and very real. Characters get some of the characters start to get killed, actually,
Okay.
as they encounter it. But because they have this science background, because they're all geniuses in their relative science fields, they're able to sort of use their wits to figure out uh, ways around it and how to get out of it. The group sort of splits off into different little groups as they're trying to evade some of the different things that are after them. At one point there's a killer robot that's pursuing them, and one group goes one way, another group goes another way. So as we're into issue number 2, that's sort of following the group as they continue to try to find a way out and try to figure out what's going on. There's additional mysteries as they start to get clues about who are the scientists
Hmm.
that put them here, and they find one of them they find has been murdered. They just find the dead body of, and it was actually an adult that had been chaperoning them to the science fair to begin with, that they thought
So,
was just one of the parents.
so the title is kind of like a name for both the good guys and the bad guys. You got the little young
Yeah,
scientists, and then you
the
have
good
the
guys.
older people who kidnapped them, who are also scientists.
Yeah, the good guys are the scientists, and also the bad guys are the scientists.
Okay. When it came down to having them use their respective sciences to kind of outsmart certain situations, did you have to do a lot of like research into those kinds of fields to see if your um, scenario would be accurate when it came down to like the solution and stuff like that?
Um, to a certain extent, like we had the kid who's sort of like the aeronautical expert, who we had to do a little research so that when he's talking about all the microbursts that can affect turbulence on an airplane. Um, we had to make sure that the dialogue we were having come out of his mouth was scientifically accurate.
Okay.
Uh, and I mean, some of it is more basic than that, like the 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 experiment that kids do, like in science class, where they make the uh, little cars with the CO2 cartridges that they race down the hallways.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever
I
seen.
used to do that when I was in grade school.
So
Those
so
are
so,
cool.
so they end up doing a giant version of that to escape from one of the things that's trying to kill them.
Okay. So
So
who are some of the main characters here? Are there only three young scientists, or are there more? Because you were saying that some of the characters actually die in this. So is this like the first three? Do they meet more? Did they come to this island with more, and they're
um,
getting picked off? Or
it starts off with a dozen characters, although we really only become very uh, deeply familiar with maybe about 8 of them.
okay.
The rest are a little bit more of the Star Trek red shirt type of.
So who would be like, say for example, your main character? Like who would have been the first character you've created in order for this story to kind of become a story?
The main character is Stuart. He is sort of a cross between like Harry Potter and like Data from the Goonies.
I would assume this is this guy right here, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. His father i- his father is Chinese, and but they've moved to Texas because he's like a runs a multi-million-dollar corporation. He's won Nobel prizes for all of his research, and he's kind of pressuring his son to follow in his footsteps. So there's like a lot of kind of like family angst going on where Stuart wants to make his own way. He really does enjoy science and wants to pursue it, but he doesn't want it to be like his father pulling the strings and paving the way for him. He wants to be able to say that he did it on his own.
Now, what is Stewart? What is his expertise when it comes to science?
Um, Electrical engineering,
Okay.
primarily. So he actually didn't even if you read the first issue, he didn't even turn in his science project because he was kind of wanted to give the spotlight to another girl in his school
Hmm.
that he kind of had a crush on, and she ends up winning when he withdraws his prize. But then later on, his dad sort of uses his influence behind the scenes to make them be announced as co-winners, even though he didn't even turn in a project.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any mechanical engineers in this particular story?
Um, I'm trying to think if there's a mechanical engineer. No, I don't think there's a mechanical engineer.
Ah, see, that's what I went to school for. I got a degree in mechanical engineering, so I was gonna see
No.
if I could possibly be a consultant for you for
Oh,
anything you may need to ask.
we don't
Oh,
always we don't always explicitly get into what everybody's science background is. So maybe one of them was a mechanical engineer.
yeah, hey, you never know. You never know. So if that character becomes like a full-fledged, all-round, main character, then hey, you never know. I could be a little bit more of an insight than just
Awesome,
giving indies
awesome.
giving indies a little spotlight. But yeah, I really do like the concept. I'm big on like stories that are based in science because it kind of gives a sense of realism to the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This kind of when I saw your deal here, I thought it was kind of like a cross between, like you said, the Goonies, but also kind of like Lost, that old show from like
yeah,
2010.
yeah. And actually, Lost was a big influence on us. We Trent and I were both huge Lost fans, and like that whole like mystery cliffhanger thing was
Hmm.
kind of like what sort of inspired us to like we were always trying to write to like these big kind of like mystery cliffhanger moments.
Yeah, Lost was very. I mean, I'm on my like sixth round of trying to watch it, so I watched it all the way through 5 times, and I mean, it's one of those shows that's like, man, this is a great show, but each time you watch it, it's like you kind of catch new things that you didn't catch the other time somehow. So, whoever wrote that probably wrote from different avenues, and just said, oh, one of the audience is going to catch this idea or this idea, and just kind of hit it in there and stuff like that. But
Absolutely.
that's pretty cool, man. I really got the impression that this was one of those. It kind of, the art that you got here kind of reminds me of like an old '90s cartoon. I guess that was
Mm.
kind of drew me to it, because not all comic books, like you said, have to be like professionally drawn. Like, you know, if you go to Marvel and you see their artwork, and then you go to like a lot of the artwork that you see in mainstream comics, they're not consistent. Like one day you have like an issue that has like great artwork, and then you go over to like next month's issue, and the artwork is like, you can kind of tell that another artist drew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and plus the art really has evolved so much because I've the amount of time that I've been working on it is so spread out that really, unless I was actually, you know, actively trying to emulate like my old style, which I didn't really want to do,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's no way I could really maintain that style the whole way through.
Uh-huh.
So as years and years go by, my art kind of evolves. If you check out my Instagram, I posted some of like the most recent pages that I've drawn, and you'll see
Okay.
that the art looks nothing like the old art.
Okay. Well, I'm digging it. I like it. I like it. So, um, I gotta. Is your Instagram name Geoff Weber, or is it the scientist?
It's Geoff, and you can see how it's spelled here. Geoff 5555.
Jeff 5555. All right, Jeff. Well, you got any questions for me or anything like that? Kind of asked all that I needed to ask for that. So,
Um, yeah, man. I mean, I was just wondering, you know, what kind of. I know you're sort of trying to build up like a community here of indie creators, supporting indie creators. So I really appreciate that, and I was wondering what you think indie creators need to be doing to help kind of build up the the strength of our community.
well, it's kind of like a two-parter question. First thing is, I know I wrote books. That's how I got into the whole indie community thing. So I wrote 6 books, published them all on Amazon, and a lot of the community in that retrospect is kind of like, hey, if you buy my book, I'll buy yours. And honestly, that's good if you're looking for quick sales and trying to get your name out there, but it doesn't really do much in terms of like building an audience, because it's kind of like you do something for someone and you are obligated to do something for that person, obviously. The indie comic creator is different because you come across work like yours. You come across work like with E10 Comics or Unique Studios or other creators that I've interviewed on the show. And like it comes down to it that, you know, people like me who's also an indie creator genuinely likes other people's work and the concept that they craft. So with that being said, I think it comes down to being able to help other creators with their work in terms of, yeah, this looks like a great concept, I'm going to buy it. Like for Kickstarter, for example, it's a perfect example with Kickstarter, because you're not really looking for anything in return. You generally go to a Kickstarter page, you find a project, you like it, you back it, and it just kind of takes off from there. And people on Kickstarter, once you create an account, can see how many accounts, I mean, how many Kickstarters you've backed, and say, wow, this guy is really active. I'm gonna keep an eye out for whatever he does if he launches a Kickstarter. So the community in which I found that the indie comic book community is a bit more intact than the, let's say, indie book community or indie music or anything that's independent. I think we have a lot in common because we're all here who have stories that need to be told. And even though you are a creator and I'm a creator, we probably would take interest in each other's work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it just comes down to more of a sense of people just being open to new ideas and new stories, because there's a fracture going on in the community, not just in indie comics. Indie comics is fine. It's the whole comic book community as a whole, because politics is starting to play a huge role in that, and a lot of people are starting to just splinter off into doing their own thing and just kind of saying, ah, forget those guys, they're not really into the real comic book creation thing. But you know, over here in the indie book kind of area, we're all good, but it's just we have to keep it together, because you have a network, I have a network, you share those networks, and that's how you find readers in those networks, and that's just how it all goes. So that would be my answer, so to speak. We all need to just help each other out as much as we can.
Where do you see as being like the future of creators who want to sort of self-publish? Do you think Kickstarter is sort of going to stick around, or do you see it evolving somehow?
I actually, well, it has evolved. So I ran a Kickstarter back in 2012. It didn't succeed. It actually failed. And it was a lot different than what it is now. Kickstarter and Indiegogo, those platforms are, I think, in my opinion, the most fantastic ideas ever, because you can come from not the greatest background in terms of drawing, but if you have a good pitch, good elevator pitch that you can pitch to however many backers you need to fund your project, then that could be a great tool for building an audience. So it's sort of a catch-22 in that one too, because they say that you need an audience to monetize to have a successful Kickstarter, but then you can have a successful Kickstarter and still have an audience built from that Kickstarter. So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg kind of scenario. But these platforms that you're using, will it evolve? Most definitely, because now Kickstarter has a feature to where you can live stream. I believe they added that back in 2016, where you can live stream to your backers updates and newsletters and stuff like that. Am I right?
They did have that for a while, although I just got an email that they were shutting that down.
Oh, well, that's kind of lame, because that was a good idea. Because, I mean, when I heard that people were live streaming from the Kickstarter, I mean, you can do like a whole Comic-Con panel with creators like you, me, and like 6 other creators, open the doors up to all of our backers, have them ask us questions, and we can all just, sit back and have a casual talk about anything, backers. And that's a good tool to have to kind of spread the
I
word.
think you can still do that, but you just have to host it on another site, like
Yeah. It
YouTube
would
or a Facebook.
it would have been better if they kept it on Kickstarter, because I think when you go live, your backers get a notification for that and they can tune in,
I think what ended up happening with that was that video service that they added was part of like a company that they acquired, but
Hmm.
then to maintain it would have required like a big financial investment to keep upgrading it and stuff. And I don't think they wanted to put in the money to keep it upgraded.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. But like you said, there's other live streaming apps like Instagram now. If you go live, you can invite other people to join in your live stream, and that could be kind of like an avenue to where you can kind of host those kinds of things, like a Q&A with your backers. The majority of the backers that people get for Kickstarters are on social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you were to find a project scrolling through Kickstarter, I'm sure that creator would have social media outlets to where you can go and find them and follow them and stuff like that. So I really do think that Kickstarter and Indiegogo and whatever else is out there, those are the only two that I've heard of, are the future, because I've read that a lot of comic book fans are slowly starting to come over to the indie side and starting checking out projects from other lesser known indie creators versus stories from DC and Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I really appreciate about Kickstarter is that it democratizes the distribution of art, where anybody can come up with an idea for a pitch and put it out there. And if the public likes the pitch, then they can all join in and make it happen. And
Hmm.
it sort of eliminates the need for like these big corporate gatekeepers, which are kind of withholding the means to production from the average person, unless you're willing to work for them, as basically exploited labor.
Yeah. I heard that a lot of the publishing companies, I mean, um, like the indie authors on Twitter, that community, a lot of them are going indie because trying to find an agent. And I've gone through the process of writing a query letter, submitting a query letter, getting a rejection letter. That's just the first step. A lot of people don't get past the first step when it comes to finding an actual agent to represent them. Once you actually find an agent, then you have to go through another gatekeeper of actually trying to find a publisher, which can take anywhere from 6 months to 3 years to get a book published. And to me, that's kind of wasting time, because you can go and indie publish something or other, whether it be a comic book or a book, promote it yourself, build up a following, do it on social media and stuff like that. And while you're doing that, you can actually go and write another book as opposed to waiting for your first book to get published. So a lot of the indie stuff is starting to come through.
Exactly. I mean, it used to be the conventional wisdom that what you would do is you would have the idea, you would write up, you know, the pitch or part of the idea, and then you would just then everyone would tell you the next step is to go and get rejected 100 times until either serendipity or through sheer persistence, you find somebody that's willing to take a chance on you.
Hmm.
And it's just why bother going through that if you believe in this idea enough that you're willing to put your own blood, sweat, and tears into it, your own money into creating it. Why not just give it a chance to see if people, actual audience, actual readers, uh, will connect with it the way you think they'll connect with it?
Hmm. Exactly. And I think that's kind of like playing. I don't think it's right for publishers to pick and choose who they're going to sell to. And because I think that most publishers have an agenda anyway, that they're only going to publish something that fit a certain narrative that they're into, that fits modern times. Because you see a lot of the stuff that's being published these days, it's a lot of political propaganda, in my opinion, to where it's fitting a certain narrative. And it's like, well, if your work doesn't fit a certain narrative, we're not going to publish it. But you have no idea how this is going to appeal to the public. And I've spoken to a ton of other readers and indie creators on my last few interviews, and it's kind of, I would say the cringe factor is up there because we want a story. That's all we want. We want a good story. We want something that's going to keep us entertained for a little while. That's why we go to movies every week. You know, you see a good movie, you see a trailer for a good movie, you go out there and you go watch it. None of us are in the market of trying to be thrown political propaganda. You know, you work 5 days a week, you want to go see a movie, and the movie's talking about stuff that you see on the everyday basis. The idea behind creators and entertainment is for the entertainment to kind of have you escape for a couple hours and get your mind somewhere else besides all the trouble and all the crap that we're dealing with in the real world. And to see that in works of art, comics, TV shows, movies, stuff like that. To me personally, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think politics should just be plucked out of the equation altogether and just be for solely forms of entertainment. You can use it for a concept though, just a slight concept to kind of help the narrative. But as far as making that the sole intention of your work is to push some type of propaganda, I don't believe in that. And that's what a lot of indie creators are doing. They're creating stories that don't have that political push. That's I see with a lot of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if your work has a reputation for, oh, it's about a message, you've already lost. I mean, it's okay. I think if your work has a message, but maybe people will sort of get it like on a absorb it on a like a deeper level
Hmm.
because maybe they're appreciating it as entertainment first, like you said, and then whatever meaning you had behind it is sort of just shaping the overall framework of the story.
Yeah,
It's not,
and go ahead.
yeah, it's not, oh, here's my message.
Yeah, and it's kind of not like it to me. Like my stories have a message in there. It's not politically motivated or anything like that. But in my opinion, it's just so my readers get the message. Great. If they don't, great. It doesn't really bother me. My goal as a creator is to create and to get content out there to people who want to read it. It's not about trying to shift political views from left to right, from gay to straight, or anything like that. It's not about that. And a lot of indie creators who originally, like I said, were trying to get traditionally published through Marvel, DC, or Dark Horse and stuff like that. They're starting to see like, do I really want to do that? I don't think I want to do that. I think I'm going to stick with indie because I think there was some weird stat that I read that for every one person who reads a published book, there's like 5 or 6 people who would read an indie published book. And I'm like, that's a pretty good ad, you know? If they can find it, they can read it. And the internet's a big place. So you got a good idea, shoot it out there. You never know what's going to happen.
Um,
So, well, Geoff, it was a pleasure talking to you. We're running out of time. It was great getting to know you a little bit better. I see you on Twitter all the time. So I'm looking forward to The Scientist #3. Just shoot me a DM when it comes out because I would really like to get my hands on issue 1 and 2, and of course help you out with issue number 3 because I'm all about indie comics.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and pleasure to talk to you, Will.
You too. You have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that wraps it up for this episode of Indie Choice Pick. Please like and subscribe, share this video, and let's support all indie creators everywhere. If you are an indie creator and you would like to come on the show, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram, or just leave a comment below stating what you're doing and let me know, and we can get you guys on the show as soon as possible. So thank you for tuning in. Again, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another fantastic creator. Have a fun night. Bye.